Gaza.
We will ensure Israel has what it needs to defend itself against these terrorists.
We stand resolutely against egregious violations of human rights, or in this case, acts of genocide.
Why is the West hesitant to call out Israel's mass killings in Gaza while accusing China of genocide where nothing comparable has happened?
As we delve into the situations in Xinjiang and Gaza, three stark contrasts emerged.
The governments blocking UN resolutions for a Gaza ceasefire are the same ones pushing hard for sanctions on Xinjiang. The defenders of Israel's atrocities in Gaza are brandishing the term genocide when discussing Xinjiang.
Those who engaged in wars under the banner of counterterrorism are turning a blind eye to a peaceful approach in Xinjiang.
Does anything happening in Xinjiang in terms of counterterrorism match the severity of Israeli attacks on Gaza?
I visited Xinjiang myself. I interacted with the religious leaders there on my own, and without any interpretation, I know what is happening in Xinjiang. What is happening in that Middle East region is exactly an apartheid. In South Africa, we have got Muslim and Jewish community. We always stress this to them, that when Jews were persecuted elsewhere in the world, we called that genocide, and we created museums, and we supported them. But we will not also keep quiet when we see the people of Palestine being extracted out of their own country, being killed mercilessly.
I find this appalling, shocking, unprecedented hypocrisy and double standards. They talk of human rights, and when people are being slaughtered in Gaza and the Americans are supporting Israel 100%, not a word, not a word. And on China, on one little thing, they make a big noise. Democracy in Hong Kong, Xinjiang human rights, Tibet human rights. This is double standards of the worst kind, and it is shocking.
How has the US weaponized the term genocide?
In January 2021, then US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo became the first prominent voice to declare that China was carrying out a genocide against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang.
The term genocide is not just a word that elicits strong feelings in people when they hear it. It is a very strict legal concept. There must be a special intent to destroy an ethnic group.
And yet, the gross misuse of the word genocide was quickly embraced by politicians and journalists in the West, eager for clickbait headlines and a shortcut to looking like one of the good guys.
The U.S. State Department's annual report solidified the decision to label China's counterterrorism response as genocide. Pompeo's successor, Antony Blinken, doubled down by repeating the allegation of genocide.
We see it in the genocide being committed against the predominantly Muslim Uyghurs and other ethnic and religious minority groups in Xinjiang.
We have to be very critical of those practices of using term genocide across the board. It has to be used very restrictively and by courts of law, not by others. I certainly do not see Xinjiang as anything coming close to the concept of genocide. But I know that there are vested interests in some circles in the United States and in Europe to use this term.
The United States and China have both experienced terrorist attacks by radicalized Islamist groups, but they deploy different approaches to tackle the problem.
Let's look at the US war on terror for decades.
Unlike the United States, which in 20 years in Afghanistan spent $2.2 trillion, $100 million a day for 20 years, and they threw 80,000 bombs, missiles and drones on Afghanistan, including the mother of all bombs. And then about 1 million Afghans were killed, and so many were homeless. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. They have no business criticizing other countries when their own track record is so poor, so abysmal, and so full of violence.
As Israel-Palestine conflict continues to worsen, genuine caring countries will place international human rights law above their geopolitical interests. There are no bombings of hospitals in Xinjiang. There are no shutdowns of basic services like food, water, shelter, and medicines in Xinjiang.
The changing definition of genocide from the US and its ally has led the world to realize their hypocrisy.